Hello, ladies and gentlemen, especially to our panelists, Professor Cyril Dampog and Professor Lovely Prieto, and to our advisor, Professor Carlos Seno. We are the group Z3108. Our study entitled A Fight for Survival During COVID-19 to the Livelihood of Ambulant Vendors in Tagum City. I, Princess Bersabal.
I am Thom Cervantes.
I am Cristine Cabales.
Table of Contents. We will be discuss the introduction, methodology, results, and discussion. COVID-19 pandemic affects human health and the global economy. Its evolution is unpredictable, making it hard for governments to provide response action suited for all populations. This sudden outbreak of the pandemic situation, which took the whole world into its grasp, also had an impact on the lives of the ambulant vendors, and so most of them who used to have a regular source of income face a discontinuation from earning their livelihood. The objective was to conduct a study of how ambulant vendors affected during COVID-19 pandemic. Let's proceed to international. In international setting, the pandemic of COVID-19 has a negative impact on human health and the global economy. Its unexpected evolution makes it difficult for governments to provide reaction activities that are appropriate for all people. Unfortunately, billions of informal workers in the entire world affected, specifically ambulant vendors. Lockdowns have affects the entire world who depended on being in public spaces for their livelihood. Even in cities where there are a lot of street vendors are permitted to peddle street in cities such as Los Angeles, New City, and Mexico City. Vendors claimed a 90% drop in income owing to decreased foot traffic.
In national setting, vendors are worried about surviving the crisis. They look to the government for quick financial help and employment stability. The Philippine government originally announced a statewide lockdown in March 2020 to stop the spread of COVID-19. Ambulant vendors or merchants were banned in 3.5 and 3.5 Filipino women work in the informal economy, selling food on street corners in Metro Manila.
Now let us proceed in the local settings. So in local setting, given the alarming state in the country brought about by the COVID-19 pandemic outbreak, the President issued the number 16 of Republic Act, also known 7160. This is also called a regional government ethics that states that all authority units shall ensure, encourage the health and safety and comfort of the convenience of the citizens. So Tagum City issued the Executive Order number 44, Section 24, item number 13, that COVID-19 City Task Force Public Safety and Law Enforcement Group shall ensure that there is no talipapa operating in places other than the public market during the duration of the implementation of the community quarantine. It is specified in this executive order in number 45, section 23, item number 10, that ambulant vendor and non-ambulant vendors are not allowed to sell any place in the city, that all vendors are advised to evacuate the area before the clearing operation. And now let's proceed to the purpose of our study. So the purpose of this phenomenological study is to explore the lived experience of the ambulant vendors here in Tagum City during pandemic. So the ambulant vendors referred in the study are those vendors involved or registered in Tagum City Enterprise Office as a vendor in night market. The primary goal of our research is to recognize that ambulant vendors experience in this pandemic. This is to collect the information about how they view and adjust the new normal. This is also to search and answer on what are the changes that they implemented to their business system when COVID-19 arises.
Yeah, RRL. First, we will be introduced to you the three theories of this study. First person environment fit theory. According to Sutton, which is the person environment fit theory, this means that the emphasis on the interaction between characteristics of a person and the environment through which a person is not only gives impact on his environment, but also the environment affects person's characteristics. This suitability of this fit between a person and the environment affects person's characteristics. Furthermore, person's functioning may be aided if the fit is optimal. In other words, if it is unsuitable, the individual may experience maladaptation. Theoretically, the relation between fit and attitudes is predicted on the reasoning that when there is fit, the environment affords individuals the opportunity to fulfill their needs. Additionally, this theory suggests that the combination of individuals' behavior and its surrounding status produces adaptive change within the individual. Next theory, diffusion of innovations theory. The theory of Rogers, it originated in communication to explain how, over time, an idea or product gains momentum and diffuses through a specific population or social system. The end result of this diffusion is that people, as part of social system, adopt a new idea, behavior, or product. Adoption means that a person does something differently than what they had previously. This is also anchored with the theory of Magda Arnold, which is the appraisal theory. An initial appraisal begins the emotional sequence by arousing both the appropriate astrological reactions and the emotional experience itself. Arnold believed that thought and emotion are largely inseparable, that emotions arise from the organism's perceptions, its appraisals of environmental changes that are relevant for its well-being. Now, we will be discuss the impact of COVID-19 crisis. 1 week into the lockdown, representatives of ambulant vendors around the country stated that many members were unable to feed their families. This occurred as the country's food insecurity worsened. Within 2 weeks of the lockdown's implementation, two-thirds of the people in impoverished metropolitan areas reported being unable to purchase food. COVID-19 has serious health and economic effects for ambulant vendors in sub-Saharan Africa. Additionally, Department for International Development explained that during the early lockdowns, many countries restricted informal labor. These measures had an impact on the informal workforce, which has traditionally have been much more vulnerable to government interference. Many ambulant vendors are impacted, particularly in terms of their livelihood, because there are rules that must be adhered to.
In survival initiatives, ambulant vendors quickly found alternatives to keep up their livelihood. Some took and delivered orders from frequent buyers via phones. So small businesses can now sell directly to consumers via online platforms because the advancement in internet technology resulting in increased sales. Others also shifted to mobile trading, which requires walking from place to place, seeking random customers. They walk bicycle or carried baskets loaded with foods or small household consumable items and dodge local authorities as they traverse neighborhoods. These vendors yelled the name of the goods to attract the customers. The local police cannot accuse a moving vendors unless they catch the vendor transacting. These trading activities, however, many are accepted by communities and appear to work well for many urban dwellers because supermarkets are only suitable for the better. The foods ordered by mobile vendors are limited to non or slowly perishable products, mostly fruits and vegetables, because the vendors do not have suitable appliances to preserve goods. While street vendors were able to borrow particular spots in public spaces, such as footpaths, for several hours under normal conditions, this was barred during lockdown.
And now let's proceed in the home environment. As ambulant vendors mentioned that home environment had reduced drastically. They had to lessen their household expenditure to less than half. Over half of vendors said that their income had stopped during the lockdown, so they did not have money to buy rations at home. The Banqueta Sidewalk is home of the ambulant vendors in the Manila Escota Street. It is their commuters, students, and office professionals can buy any any food, including fish ball, peanuts, and fruits. Since the quarantine began, some vendors have received 2 kilograms of rice in the relief supplies. They had no choice but to go and sell just to recover the income that they lost. According to the participants and information in this situation, they are more eager to sell of their products. They strive in order to recover the sale or the capital that they lost. Many of them feels that frustrated since they have no capacity to support the needs of their family during the lockdown and leave starvation. The fight for food will not be eliminated to street vendors. Low income that will rely on the street vendors for their food must now pay a high price. It is possible that this will have far-reaching consequences. So this COVID-19 crisis will not affect all families in the same way, but it is likely to have a higher impact to the ambulant vendors, as well as their children who are especially sensitive to these developmental inputs. The general public also look the reacting same way to the current scenario. Stress, stigma, concern, phobia, and also increase in this situation. And now let's proceed to the methodology. So this section outlines the research methods to be employed in carrying out of this study. So this chapter covers first is the research participants, research interview guide, and third is the research designs and procedure. Next is the research participants. So the research study focused on studying in the ambulant vendors here in Tagum City, their adjustment, changes in business, and their views to the COVID-19 crisis. So these motives are highly important to be suitable as a participants to this phenomenological study. So we researchers chose ambulant vendors to participate properly to this study. We researchers chose 14 participants for the study, 7 for the in-depth interview, and 7 for the focus group discussion. So purposive sampling was used by the researchers to select our participants. So participants was chosen based on the information defined by the researchers to determine the validity of the data. First is ambulant vendors must have an experience in selling more than 10 years. Second, must be a registered in enterprise office. And third is also a bona fide resident of Tagum City, Davao del Norte. Next is we have the research interview guide. So this research studies use qualitative methods. So we researchers use interview guide, though through interview and researchers ask different questions that are related to our study. So in the qualitative research, the aim of our study is to have an access and participants' apprehensions and ideas in the study. So we all know that participants have a different level of knowledge about the topic, so the researchers depend on the capability of the participants to share their experience and response to their interview questions. We researchers use audio recordings in order to collect all the information given by the participants. So we ensure that we field notes are taken during the interview. So next is we have the research designs and procedures. So in this study, the phenomenological approach, which is qualitative in nature, was used. So qualitative study focused on why of a social phenomena rather than what relies on human beings. This is a first-hand experience as meaning-making actors in their daily lives. So based on the idea of Moran 2000, phenomenological study is both a philosophical movement as well as a group of qualitative research approaches. As an outcome, we researchers had much a simpler way describing and capable of the understanding that ambulant vendors experience during the pandemic. So we researchers use this type of qualitative research since this study talks about the livelihood of the ambulant vendors due to the COVID-19 crisis. So we researchers sought and assess the information that will aid in the resolution and also the understanding of a problem, as well as to obtain an important and easily accessible data. So here are the following steps that we employ in gathering the data. First is B, obtaining a permission to conduct the study. To begin with, we researchers draft an approval letter that will be signed by the program director and the research committee. Second is we researchers will then use proposed sampling to select our participants. Third is respondents are given a permission letter outlining the study. So if the verification is already official, the participants were then asked if they are willing to participate in the research of signing a consent form and discussing the interview plan is developed based on their available time and schedule. Fourth is participants will inform that the entire interview will be recording using smartphones, and the researchers will make sure that each participant receive a copy of a transcript. So each participant obtain a copy of the record and understanding of their answers. And lastly, the researchers will also discuss why the interview needs to be recorded, as well as the technical difficulties that it entails. So researchers also talks about why the interview needs to be recorded and also the technical challenges that this entails. So we guarantee that participants that this study will be legitimate and classified information and unbiased.
Now let's proceed to the results and discussions. The study's core findings are presented and discussed both in textual and tabular forms regarding the aim of the study, which was to perceive the changes and challenges of ambulant vendors in this pandemic. Correspondingly, the data were gathered by responding following research question. First, what are the situations they experience in order for them to adjust COVID-19 arise? Second, what are the changes they apply in their business system when COVID-19 arise? Third, what do they view on the difficulty of the situation due to this COVID-19? During the conduct of the IDI and FGD, the researchers recorded their responses through an audio recorder. Each of the participants eagerly answered the questions, and they honestly and willingly answered the given questions about the experience on the impact of COVID-19 to their livelihood. After conducting an interview and in-depth interview and focus group discussion, the responses of the participants were gathered together. First, the gathered data was transcribed and translated carefully by the researchers. Second, the recorded responses of the participants were encoded and undergone a process, then classified into major themes. Lastly, the responses of 7 students who participated in IDI and 7 for FGD are the basis of the major themes and tabulated data. In the conduct of IDI, the participants were interviewed to their preferred place. Some of them were shy at first, but then their responses turned out good. On the other hand, in conducting the FGD, the participants were able to share their ideas and thoughts, which led to a successful discussion. The participants answered the given questions comfortably by listening, considering, comparing their answers to other participants' response. Before conducting, all participants were able to read and sign first the informed consent. Let's proceed to categorizing data. Upon accomplishing the in-depth interviews and the focus group discussion, data from the audio tape recordings were directly transcribed, and for those answers in vernacular were carefully translated into English. To delete unnecessary data from the transcription, data reduction was employed to convert those data into the essential and logical material, simply understood by many. Thematic analysis was the approach used in pairing and separating data, a way of sorting and categorizing. Through data reduction, the lengthy and the large volumes of qualitative data gathered came out consolidated and manageable, easier to control and understood. We also asked for assistance from a professional who was an expert on analyzing data.
Now in participant information. This section also delves into the data analysis process involved in categorizing essential themes gathered from in-depth interviews and focus group discussions. Furthermore, it elucidates the study's finding in connection with related literature. We have many vendors that are selling peanuts, corn dog, ice cream, mangoes, fruit shakes, banana Q, takoyaki, gulaman, and many more. The next step was data to display that was done through graphic organizers such as matrix or table for the viewer to draw his conclusion. In this step, we read our data several times to be acquainted with them. And also to achieve triangulation, we used multiple sources of our studies. These multiple sources of evidence were interview transcripts from the key informants and FGD participants, insightful fields notes, and readings from related literature. In addition to triangulation method, peer debriefing was conducted. We also constructed the essential themes with the help of peer debriefer. Nevertheless, before that, we asked some of our friends and classmates to help us inspect and scrutinize the transcriptions. We also consider their comments and suggestions, such as deleting data that are not significant to the study.
And now we will be discuss the essential themes generated on this study. Research question number 1. What are the situations they experience in order for them to adjust as COVID-19 arise? So in this main question, we generated 2 essential themes, which COVID protocols restrictions and community lockdown. During the interview of the teams, we generated COVID protocols or restrictions. Many ambulant vendors are affected, especially in their livelihood, since there are restrictions that should be followed. It affects their selling in a way that the government or city implemented curfews and social distancing that result for them to experience hardship to earn an income. Where informal vendors were allowed to work, authorities issued some form of health protocols regulating their activity. Another theme emphasized is community lockdown. The most difficult time and challenging to the livelihood of ambulant vendors when lockdown happened. Their lifestyle changed and they experienced difficulties to survive. The city government imposed lockdown that all businesses, even small businesses, were prohibited to sell. It has been very harsh on ambulant vendors who have exhausted their earnings and having a hardship in trying to survive and feed themselves. It is not easy for them since the number of buyers has goes down and so have earnings.
Research question 2. The question is, what are the changes they apply in their business system when COVID-19 arises? So we generate 3 alternative themes, such as also core ideas. The first theme generated on this question is a shift from traditional to online selling. When traditional shopping or selling becomes difficult or even frightening, most people are increasingly inclined to buy online. Because there are so many restrictions, ambulant vendors must find creative ways to create or make a living on a daily basis, and online platforms are primary means of selling their merchandises. The next emphasizes theme is the price increase. Increased also mainly due to unavailability of raw materials, hence higher cost. The high cost of some critical ingredients force some vendors to higher prices of their products, since that raw materials are in the higher cost also. They have not any choice, because if they don't really higher the price, they are the one who will suffer, and this is the only way to recover their capitals. The third theme is selling in the neighborhoods. It is one of the changes they apply in their small business was to sell their products to neighbors when lockdown happened. They sell their products in front of their houses and making sure the protocols were followed at the same time. This was the one and only way for them to earn income just to support the needs of their families and to survive every day. Selling in neighborhood really helped for them to support their daily necessities.
And the discussion of the data. So we'll discuss about the research question number 3. What do they view on the difficulty of the situation due to the COVID-19? So in this research question number 3, we generate 4 things. First is there is the stressor. So during the interview, one of the teams generated a stressor. In this pandemic, the background stressor must also be evaluated in the context of the pandemic when assessing the emotional and cognitive impact. Since their work is matter of survival, they do not quarantine themselves, even they get sick. They are stressed as a result of economic crisis and risk of infection. So the government provides no clear public health or economic guarantees in times of adversity. As a result, despite the government's stay-at-home orders, they are unable to stop working. All of these factors could have contributed to the slow of mental health concerns among the ambulant vendors during this pandemic crisis. So the population as a whole appears to be reacting to the current situation in a certain way. There has been a large increase in stress, stigma, concern, phobia, and others. Another theme is emphasized is the harbinger practice. We all know that positive emotions experience have been associated with great well-being and psychological resources needed for adapting and coping. In that, the usage of positive emotion is one of the characteristics of resilience response during the stressor. Coping strategies, the increase of positive emotions have been found to be adopted in treating the problems, such as anxiety, depression, and also the stress. So people can feel positive emotions in a variety of ways, including one of that is anticipating a positive events. Maintaining a positive and hopeful attitudes towards the problems can lead to more effective problem-solving attempts in the future. It is clear that cultivating a positive emotions will be an effective strategy for coping with the major and the minor stressors related to the COVID-19 pandemic. Next emphasized theme is a challenge to thrive. So COVID-19 has a particularly painful impact on the informal laborers who had spent all the savings and wages trying to feed themselves during the prolonged lockdown. As COVID-19 continues, this pandemic has triggered a distinct economic crisis in a number of areas of work and businesses, including those ambulant vendors. Positive anticipation and striving were both found to predict an increase in the positive emotions concurrently. According to their participants of the information in this situation, that they are more eager to sell of their products and they strive in order to recover the capital that they lost. The fourth theme is the faith strengthener. As the coronavirus pandemic continues, the faith remains as an important part of some ambulant vendors. Faith, spirituality is a source of comfort, support, purpose, enhance the mental health by instilling a sense of belonging and an essential interconnectivity. Participants with a spiritual band discuss how they cope with using faith-based practices. So participants pray more, and prayer was means to cope with sadness and have hope for the future for a wide range of people from family, members, and friends to healthcare professionals. So spiritual well-being is defined as a state that supports an individual's attitudes and life goals by connecting individual mind and body, society, intelligence, and also the health.
The next one is the implication for practice. We generate 9 themes which are COVID protocols or restrictions, community lockdown, shift from traditional to online selling, price increase, selling in neighborhood, stressor, harbinger practice, challenge to strive, and faith strengthener. The result of these challenges and experiences of ambulant vendors in Tagum City are less prepared to face this pandemic. This study gives us an idea to future vendors on how to overcome the challenges that they might experience. And now for the implication for further research, the results of this study develop new ideas which could probably be useful to provide more explanation and implication for further study. This study serves for further research and investigation on what are the challenges of the ambulant vendors experienced during pandemic and how it affects to their livelihood. Future research may be done by conducting a re-interview with some of the participants to find out their views and insights on their experiences on pandemic have not changed over time.
Now let's proceed in the concluding remarks. So ambulant vendors' livelihoods have been destroyed by the pandemic, which has disrupted their ability to their jobs and experiencing financial loss. Due to the crisis, many ambulant vendors have been affected and have led to the reduced workforce across all economic sectors and suppressed their work jobs. Ambulant vendors, and most of them who used to have a regular source of income, face a discontinuation from earning to their livelihood.
We have proven that street vendors are a sector of the population that is highly vulnerable to significant economic loss due to contingency measures. Informal workers can stop working despite the stay at home initiative because the government has not implemented strategies that guarantee their survival and their families. As a researcher also, we must participate on the activities that will uplift to ambulant vendor and increase participation in order to advertise the ambulant vendors. As a researcher and as a student, we have learned that vendors contribute to the economic growth and stability of our community.
As a concluding remarks, we need to create or promote a program that would address their concerns, especially during pandemic.
And that's all our presentation. I am Princess May Bersabal.
I am Thom Cervantes.
And I am Cristine Jane Cabales.
And our research entitled A Fight for Survival, the Impact of COVID-19 Crisis to the Ambulant Vendors in TAGUM City.